So welcome Alice and Bill and Arlene. I already welcomed you, and Alexis. Welcome to our quarterly Jewish Earth Alliance Interfaith Power and Light Pennsylvania briefing on what's going on in either Washington or Harrisburg. And we are really happy tonight to have Rob Altenburg here. He has the inside story of what's going on in Harrisburg, and there's a lot going on this week. It's budget week, and they finally have woken up to things. So it's really an interesting time, and I'm so glad he's willing to give us the inside scoop. I thought I would do a short reflection, and I'm taking this from Rabbi Jeannie Rosen. And she's in her 50s. She decided to start a new environmental group that she called Dayenu, which in Hebrew means enough. And she says, Dayenu, we've had enough destruction, enough valuing of fossil fuel companies over human life, enough letting the impacts of climate destruction fall disproportionately on Black, Brown, Indigenous, poor, and marginalized communities. Dayenu, that means enough. But Dayenu also means that we have enough. We have what we need to confront the climate crisis. We have the science, we have the resources, we have the people, and we have the power. We have what we need so that everybody can have enough. Now is the time to join together in this urgent and sacred work. Nothing less than the future of humanity is at stake. And that's exactly how I feel about what we're going to be talking about tonight in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a part of the problem right now, and we want to be part of the solution. So thank you so much, Rob. Take it away, and you'll.
Oh, so let me share my slides here. Thank you. There we go. I know I see a lot of familiar names in the participant list. So briefly, I'm Rob Altenburg, Senior Director of Energy and Climate for PennFuture. We're a statewide environmental advocacy organization. And I start off a lot of my presentations with this picture because there's a little building in the lower left-hand corner with solar panels on it. That's our headquarters in Harrisburg. We're the only solar panels you see in the Capitol complex, and we're working really hard to change that. But that's where we are right now. As was mentioned, this is the budget season, so there may be meetings going on as I speak. That are completely blowing up everything that we're talking about here tonight. That's the way budget season works. We'll talk a little bit about the buzz and what we hear happening in town around the budget season. But the people that nobody can ever be like very confident of what's going on, and things change very rapidly this time of year. The signs seem to point to an on-time budget. It looks like the legislature is intending to be done this weekend sometime, and that might involve some late nights. We've seen good progress going into the last days of a budget, up to a budget deadline, suddenly blow up and then not have a budget well into the fall. So it's very hard to say anything definitely. But so far, things look like they are going on track for an on-time budget. We'll talk a little bit later about some of the possible deals that are out there. But the things to watch out for this time of year, certainly deals. And outside of the budget, there's also what they call the code bills. So the tax code, the administrative code, the fiscal code. They're also called the trailer bills because they often come after a budget. Sometimes you may see things, a line item in the budget, which is great, but deals also happen in these trailer bills. And we may or may not see them. There's been really, I think, less than usual chatter about what might end up in those bills. Positive things that there's buzz about that we certainly would like to see happen, and we, I think, expect to see happening: money around clean streams, money around whole home repair, and pretty confident there's going to be some money around well plugging going into that in addition to the federal money that's out there. Those are good things. We're working on some more. Some of the hot topics that are not part of the budget deal. We really do not expect these to pass as part of a budget this weekend. The one is press. This is Governor Shapiro's updates to our alternative energy portfolio standards. Pennsylvania adopted these standards back in 2004, and they require our energy people that sell energy in Pennsylvania, so utilities and retail electric sales companies, to ensure a certain percentage of the energy they sell comes from various sources. 8% of which is tier one or clean sources, 0.5% of that being solar. And then there's other tiers with things like tier two has waste coal, which we don't care for quite as much. So Pennsylvania was great leading the charge with AEPS back in 2004. We're a very early state, but other states have long surpassed us with much, much higher standards than we have now. So press looks to update that. And what they're moving to is a tier one rather than 8% where we are now, to have 35% tier one sources by 2035. They've slightly moved around what this tier one would be. If we see on the left, the existing tier one, mostly wind, solar, a little bit of wood waste, that's 80% of tier one. Well, it's got other things in there, but those are fairly minor sources by comparison. And we see wood waste moving out of tier one, wind and solar staying there. Adding geothermal, advanced reactors, which almost no chance of any of them being built, and fusion, which has been 20 years away for the last 50 years. So none of that is going to get built by 2035. Yeah, very little chance of any of that happening. Tier one, it'll shift a little bit. Tier two, waste coal is moving out of tier two to its own tier three. Right now, waste coal and hydro storage are the big sources. And we're having, I won't go line by line in all this in the short time we have, but the tier two sources are not all clean sources, although there's certain environmental benefits for some of the ones that we have in tier two. And then we're also creating a new tier three in press. Waste coal would be the majority source in that by far. And there's actually, last year, there was more energy generated from waste coal than would have been required under tier three. So those are the new tiers we're having. I won't go through them all tier by tier, what they would look like. But if you look at the existing sources that we have now compared to what's in the tier one 2035 requirement, there's a pretty big gap to fill. And that would take probably about 10 gigawatts of solar and 10 gigawatts of wind to fill that. That's about what we talked about during the Finding Pennsylvania Solar Future project. We can do that definitely for solar and certainly for wind as well. It will take some work, but we would like to see that pass. Press, it just had a hearing in the House Environmental Resources and Energy Committee, very contentious hearing with the gas industry representatives really not liking it, as one can imagine, since gas is now 50% of our generation, 58% of our generation. They certainly do not want competition. But this will be a fight that'll certainly go into the fall, probably next year as well. The other big topic, well, it seems like it's been a big topic for a long time, and this timeline sort of bears that out, is Pennsylvania's participation in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. Well, RGGI started in 2009. It was 10 years later where Governor Wolf began to say, we're going to join RGGI. There was some campaign talk about that before that point. We actually got the regulations published in April of 2022. So, wow, 2 years ago now. The Commonwealth Court immediately stated there had been other wrangling with the legislature even prior to that. It's been in the courts ever since. We have, PennFuture, we've attempted to intervene in the case, so far unsuccessfully. The Commonwealth Court rejected it, but the Supreme Court took the case. And we have a briefing schedule. So next month, even though we're not participating, we have not been granted intervention. We still have been. We're going to submit briefs for the Supreme Court in July. Do not expect a decision on Reggie before the fall, at absolute minimum. And next year, 2025 is looking like a possibility. So Reggie is going to be hanging out there for a while. While the courts are working on Reggie, the legislature is working on possible alternatives to Reggie. And one of the big one is called PACER. This is another part of Governor Shapiro's energy plan. It is very similar to Reggie, except it is a Pennsylvania program. So Pennsylvania creates the program from scratch. If it ends up being compatible with Reggie, we could trade credits back and forth with Reggie's states, but that is not a requirement. And it also changes the investment. Under Reggie, all of the proceeds from the program go into the Clean Air Fund for investments to reduce air pollution. Under PACER, 75% of them would go right back to consumers for essentially rebates on energy costs. And then there's some debate of where those other costs would go. This could all change with amendments as well. But slightly different program. Caps, we don't know what the caps are going to be, so it's sort of hard to model the effectiveness. It could be, the cap part could easily be as effective, as stringent as Reggie. The investment part, it really depends how that plays out to see what we get from investment. So Press and PACER are the two big bills that Governor Shapiro has pushed. We're also working heavily, and this is probably not a budget play, but certainly a potential for the fall would be finally passing community solar. House Bill 1842 is a bill this session. This lets the 50 to 75% of Pennsylvanians that don't have solar access, so renters, multifamily housing, other things like that, could buy or lease a share of a centralized system. We've had strong bipartisan support for 8 years, and we are trying to get it passed. It's difficult to pass bills like this, continuing to work on that. A couple other current events quickly. The PETA, Pennsylvania Energy Development Authority bill. PETA has been around since the 80s, so that's not new. But there's a bill that would sort of modernize that and make some changes. It passed the House. It passed the House just yesterday. Just yesterday. So this goes to the Senate. Not probably time for this to be a budget play, but we'll certainly be pushing to move PETA in the Senate. The other bill that's could actually pass really very, very soon is solar for schools. This has already passed the House. It's over in the Senate. Just this afternoon, it passed the Senate's Community Economic and Recreational Development Committee. We keep changing these committee names and I can never keep them straight. But it just passed out of committee today. And this would be a grant programs where schools could 50% of the money for solar projects could be funded through this grant program. It looks like, I haven't seen the language of the Senate amendments yet. It looks like it would extend this to charter schools. We still don't have a good feel on exactly what the amount of the appropriation would be. And there may be a trade in the works where a bill that the Republicans want, probably fees on electric vehicles. There's talk about this being some sort of a trade for a bill putting a fee on electric vehicles. So we'll see where that goes. But we are hopeful that solar for schools will pass. So I will stop there. I tried to do a 15-minute overview and open it up for questions. And you're muted.
I said thank you so much, Rob. That was amazing overview. That was obviously up to date. And had we done this earlier, it would have been a different presentation.
It might be changed in 15 minutes. This is budget season. These things happen.
Just unmute and start asking questions, Elise Beth. Thanks.
Hi. So I'm not really familiar with a lot of what's going on, I have to admit, in Harrisburg. And a lot of what you said was kind of gibberish to me. I don't know what the acronyms stand for. Can you, I don't know if it's appropriate right now, but just give kind of a thumbnail of of the contrast between what has been going on and what is going on in English so that I can pass it on to my next door neighbors.
Yeah, well, we haven't seen a lot of motion on a lot of clean energy things for a while. So what's been happening is gridlock. What we're trying to move is there's a couple key areas. Our renewable portfolio standards, a requirement to purchase a certain amount of clean energy. That is really important to jumpstart the growth of the clean energy industry in Pennsylvania. And that has been languishing for the last 4 years, that our targets have not gotten any higher. And we're feeling that we're still seeing growth in the industry, but not nearly what other states have. So we're trying to find ways to incentivize growth with that. With community solar, it's a way, one, to increase solar, to give people the opportunity that wouldn't have access to solar, to find a cost-effective way to use it. Like, well, right now I have solar on the roof of my house, but not everybody has access to their own roof, and not everybody can, write a check for whatever it costs to install the solar panels. So community solar is a great solar access methodology. The other bills that we're working at, this original greenhouse gas initiative, yeah, I probably skipped over that fast given the time. The idea there is a cap and invest program. So we put a cap on the amount of carbon we can pollute from our fossil fuel power plants. And for each ton of pollution, the plant operators have to buy an allowance. The money from those allowances, they're bought at auction, and the money goes back to the state to invest how they decide to invest. Right now, that would mostly probably be clean energy and things like that under RGGI, if the courts would get moving. But the governor is talking about other investment strategies as well.
Thank you.
That's the short version.
Thanks.
I had a question on PACER versus RGGI, since you just touched on that again. The bullet point you put out that seemed significantly different was PACER was like 75% of the caps were going back to the consumers, and
Yes.
under RGGI, the most of it was supposed to go to strengthening clean air standards.
Yeah.
That seemed like, if that's what you were mentioning, that seemed like the most significant part of it.
It's a big change.
What I'm interested to know is why, is there something behind the scenes that you might guess at that is like, why throwing this out? Is there some sort of other horse trading going on? Why throw RGGI out for PACER?
Well, so the reason why RGGI puts all its money in the Clean Air Fund is because the DEP didn't have a choice. They needed, because without legislative authorization to spend money, they had to put it in a fund that was already existing and they had access to. So that's why it all went there. There were legislative bills last session that would move that around and make different choices. And other states do different choices than put it all in their Clean Air Fund. So that's in line with what other people are doing. Why Governor Wolf said 75% in rate rebates, that he certainly, I'm sure, wants to avoid any suggestion that this would raise costs for consumers. There's lots of ways to do that, and we're looking forward to hearing so we can talk about alternatives better ways to invest. I mean, if we help consumers buy efficient appliances, for example, they could save more money than just giving them a check. So we could lower electric bills even if it doesn't lower rates. So there's lots we can talk about.
Thanks.
I see Rachel's hand is up.
Yes, I had heard that there was a chance that solar for schools would pass in the budget. Is that still a chance?
I mean, it could. If it's a trade for fees, yeah, I mean, they're positioned so that they could. We have enough time to do it. Whether or not it does or not,
Okay,
it's,
thank you.
it's like no
I
one
guess
knows.
we'll find out at the end of July, maybe, whether it
You-
passed in the budget.
No, it would be like this weekend.
Okay.
It would be.
great. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, I couldn't figure out what the little hand thing is, but anyway, my state senator is a Republican, and I've seen him send emails against Pacer. That's the one that's instead of Reggie, right? Because
Yeah.
they don't seem to see a difference between the two. The Republicans, I mean. Have you seen any difference in reception?
I mean, I have not polled every Republican, certainly, about it. I suspect the Republican caucus is pretty uniformly against it. And I mean, the challenge there is you could have a discussion on the relative merits of it, and I'm sure it's more important to some members of the caucus than others. But there's also the politics of nobody wants to be seen giving Governor Shapiro a win. Governor Shapiro certainly, he hasn't announced anything, but people do expect that, he's looking at, is he going to make a presidential run someday? So there's these, politics of, do you want to give him, a win? But then on the other side, you may have people, Democratic and Republican, that are looking at, how is the investment going to impact their constituents and their community? And we'll see what happens really in the election cycle. Pacer and Press is not going to move prior to the election, certainly. But, elections can change things. If people decide that a staunch anti-environmental vote is not what it wants, is not going to get them reelected, maybe you'll see positions moderate. So
That's nice optimism. Yeah. So, Rob, does someone else have a question? For people who are not as up to date on these things as you are, perhaps you can draw a contrast between Pennsylvania and our neighboring states in terms of where we are on any of these, Reggie, Pace, Press, or what's in them, just so people can realize that Pennsylvania is dead last when it comes to these things. And a lot of other states around us are real leaders. And we've also explain alternative energy portfolio standard, please.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, okay. So the portfolio standards, that's maybe, I don't know if that's the easy one to start with, but the portfolio standards, essentially what that says is companies have to ensure that a certain percentage of the energy that's sold comes from various sources. So right now, 8% comes from tier one sources. 0.5% of that is solar. It's actually in-state solar from Pennsylvania, with some minor exceptions. They do that by there's tracking credits that they buy. So if like the solar on my roof, for every megawatt hour I generate, I can generate 1 AEPS credit. And I could sell that credit to somebody and or actually like have an aggregator do it for me, but I could sell that credit to somebody. And right now a solar credit is worth about $30. So that's, I could do that to help fund putting solar on my roof. And it helps fund directly fund projects and encourage projects to get built. Because it's not getting bigger right now, it's not really incentivizing a lot more projects. There's still some growth out there because solar is very cost effective, but not what it could be. So we want to extend that. We want to expand that. That's going to attract investment into the state, bring jobs into the state, and certainly help clean up our power grid.
And your credits, if you were selling them in New Jersey, Maryland, Washington, D.C., or New York,
In New
would
Jersey,
be-
my credits would be like a couple $100. I haven't checked recently. Much more, because they've got much higher targets than we do. I mean, we've states with 50 and 100% clean energy standards, where we're at 8. So we have much lower standards. Pennsylvania generates less solar energy than Massachusetts. I think less than Connecticut too. I think we're on par with Connecticut. So I think that's changing. I think we finally pulled ahead. We pulled ahead of them, but we do not have we've got a lot more potential to grow our clean energy than we're actually doing, and a lot of that is we have a gas industry that has really locked up the state. 58% of our generation is gas. And it's unreliable. The winter storm Elliott, that is Christmas the year before last, 70% of the forced outages were gas plants failing. And we've got a lot of eggs in that basket, and the gas industry is telling us to invest more. So we need to diversify for a lot of reasons.
And how about if Reggie or Pacer would pass, what kind of money do other states get?
We have already lost pushing $3 billion because of the delay. That's what we would had there not been a court stay, and had the Reggie clearing prices been with us what they were without us, which, I mean, the markets will shift things a little bit, but billions to invest. And this is companies, I mean, we pay to have our trash taken away. The idea that a company has to pay to pollute a ton of carbon pollution shouldn't be that shocking, but they don't want to.
And how about solar in other states? You said it's much higher and more use in Massachusetts.
Yeah, our surrounding states. I haven't looked how we compare to West Virginia, but West Virginia is a little low. Ohio is a low, but the surrounding states on the east are doing far better than us. And even states like Ohio, which have a lot of the same political issues that we're facing, you're seeing them do a better job attracting things like new clean businesses, whether it's batteries, for storage and things like that. They've been more aggressive as that, where we've been focused almost entirely on funding the gas industry.
Rob, within press, is there any requirement for in-state versus buy
Yes.
the renewables anywhere?
Yes. So right now, under AEPS, Tier 2, so waste coal, has to be in-state, and solar has to be in-state, and Tier 1 can be anywhere. What press does is it has a phase-in period to where sources have to be increasingly in-state as the time goes along. So initially, you might see, again, more out-of-state sources, but every year the in-state proportion gets higher.
Is that your pie chart that showed the gap was interesting to me, that we would need, you said 10 gigawatts of solar and 10 gigawatts of wind.
Yeah, on that.
Fill out the 35%.
Yeah, by 2035 on that.
And your suspicion is that initially that would come more from out of state than in state, or what's your feeling there?
There may be a bit of a mix. I mean, we've got a lot of solar development in our queue. So it's complicated to say which things will get built first. But that's that's a big build out, but it's within the realm of possibility. I mean, Texas has been building out their solar at a faster rate. They have certain advantages to us, but we certainly could build out at that rate. Where it's going to show up, that's a harder modeling exercise. Wind, I think there's still going to be some out of state for some time. That's just like a longer, there isn't anything in the immediate pipeline, I think, in Pennsylvania. So that would take like 2 years at least to get it moving. But solar, we could really expand quickly.
At one point, I think there was a bill for wind, offshore wind in Lake Erie. Has that gone anywhere?
There's talk about doing that. Yeah, it's a fight, and it depends. Well, I've seen different versions of the bill. Some of them have things like they say, well, they're limiting it so it's not going to be near shore, which I think a lot of the people for recreation and things like that would prefer it be further out. Where that is located is a hard decision, and there's a lot of talk up in Erie about what that would mean. Certainly, there's a huge wind potential in Lake Erie. And Ohio had a project that sort of fell apart with, I think some politics and some finance reasons. Their proposal recently for Lake Erie wind fell apart. But yeah, it's still on the table. I don't see anything happening this summer on it.
Thank you.
So today I heard about the Senate Bill 831, the carbon capture and sequestration bill, and apparently they put some amendments in it. Are you up to date on that?
I've seen the bill. I didn't see. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I did see those amendments. Let me. Sorry, mentally shift gears if that's the bill that I'm thinking about. Yeah, okay, yes, there were House amendments to that bill.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So if these are the ones I'm thinking about, so this is a bill that's primarily Senator Yaw has been pushing it to increase the amount of to make it easier to do geologic storage of carbon in Pennsylvania. We had some concerns about the language of his bill. One of them was a thing called forced polling. So under his bill, if you did not want the pore space under your property to be used to store carbon, if 60% of your neighbors, essentially 60% of the people with that pore space signed up for it, you could be forced into the pool. That's a little bit concerning. The new language changes that mix, so 75% of the people would have to say they wanted to force somebody that was unwilling into that pool. So a little bit of an improvement there. One of our areas of big concern was after 10 years, a company could essentially say, we're done, and file for a certificate of closure and walk away and leave the state financially responsible. The amendments changed that to 50 years, which is a whole lot better than it was. Some other changes in there that I would probably have to go look at the bill to remember off the top of my head. Generally, the amendments are still a good improvement. I think with the amendments, we're pretty neutral on the bill. I think there's still some concerns. We were opposed to it before. We're certainly less opposed, probably neutral on the bill as it stands with the amendments. Although there's things we like, things we don't like.
Perhaps you could explain carbon capture and sequestration.
Oh, that's
Well,
if it worked, which we're not. One of our problems is we're not sure it works. The idea there is there are things that are going to be hard to decarbonize. Primary steel, cement making, certainly long distance jet transportation, things like that. They're just challenging things to decarbonize. You can't really electrify them and plug them in very well and use like solar or clean energy. So what do we do in those cases? or if we continue to use gas as like a bunker fuel, a peaking fuel to run when, you know, in the Germans have a great word called Dunkelflaute, the dark doldrums, when it's cloudy and not windy. You know, what do we do in those period of time? What if we have to burn fossil fuels? Well, the idea is in those cases, one option is to capture the carbon and store it underground. And if it works, it's a pretty good idea. And certainly the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has said, you know, it would be a necessary technology really to get to net zero carbon. The problem is it's expensive and it hasn't worked as well as people have hoped in the times they've tried it so far. So our position has been generally a little bit of skepticism. Certainly we don't oppose to continued research into it. We don't want people to say, well, we can just forget about solar, we can forget about energy efficiency, we can forget about all of this. Carbon capture is going to save us in a few years, because we don't trust that that will be the case. But you know, certainly, hey, you know, if the feds want to spend some money on it and see if it works, we're not going to object to that. But it's got to be effective, and we'll see.
Thank you. Mark?
Did I hear you say that there was bipartisan support to move a bill on community solar forward, that it had a chance of going through?
We have had bipartisan support for 8 years. You know, whether it's the right support so it has been the problem. Like we had Republican prime sponsor for many years, but could not navigate it through the House or the Senate. It's just been because of the committee, who's on the committees and letting it move. So it's just challenging. I haven't heard of it being part of an agreement to move. I think if we could get it to the floor vote, I think it would pass. But the challenge so far has been getting it to a floor vote. And the one particular challenge right now is we're seeing electric utilities, I think, trying to muddy the water. They have a suspiciously similar sounding bill that doesn't actually accomplish anything. And we're hearing, you know, people tell legislators, well, you can't do them both, and they should do this do nothing bill. So that's kind of where the conversation is going right now.
Well, I was wondering about, you know, you talk oil and gas and fossil fuel entrenched lobbying. Why there would the people that they are lobbying in either chamber of the legislature, why there would be the support? I mean, I don't really know anything about community solar. I was working with somebody on I'm in Philadelphia. We were working on a solar sharing project based on some Supreme Court rulings, a Homrich Supreme Court ruling.
Yeah.
And PICO has sort of stopped us at every turn, rejected the application for a no-load meter. And it just seems like there's not, you know, I can only project that, hey, they don't want net metering. They don't want to not be selling electricity to people that are generating, you know, or maybe getting into the plus column. So that's why I thought, well, I don't know anything about community solar, but maybe aren't the same things coming up? Like, boy, that's scary.
They're a little different. The Homrich case is, well, it's far too in the weeds. I think for this call, but it is fundamentally different. I think the key thing with community solar is, yes, there is going to be opposition from gas-funded legislators. There aren't as many gas legislators as one would think, and you know, if you are a legislator in a, you know, that you have the opportunity to do something that's going to give your constituents a way to lower their electric bills, that's kind of attractive. So I think there's reasons for people to support it. even though there may be internal party pressures not to. And hopefully that's enough to get it across the line.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
since we have 3 more questions, David.
Well, thank you. I phoned in, so I heard most of the presentation. I was finishing up my caretaking job, so I've been off camera, and I apologize. You don't want to see me on camera, though. At the moment, I'm cooling off. I've got 2 questions. You can take your pick. They both look ahead a little bit, but they both, I think, have election year and political associations that I hope I can get some comments on. First one has to do with my senator, a man by the name of Kane, who was looking over his shoulder during his entire first-term election campaign at the Boilermakers Union, because they were allied with the gas industry. So my question related to that is, have they and other unions that have had jobs in this certain to decline industry been assured in any way in the last several years that there will be jobs that will take their place that they would be eligible for? So that's question one. You can take your pick of these questions, either both or neither. The second one has to do with, and I'm sorry it's got a longer preface, and it's a bit of a thought experiment. It has to do with whether fossil is still subsidized at various levels of government and incentivized more than renewables. I suspect that it is, starting with the oil depletion and other places. Well, could you comment on the political implications I can't remember the verb, submitting proposed legislation that would be entitled something like the Level Playing Field for Consumers Act, which would do for subsidies for competition in the intrastate Pennsylvania energy industry, what other kinds of subsidies do in places, at least like Delaware, where I grew up, in public education, where poorer school districts with a lower local tax base to finance their schools are supplemented by state level subsidies to level them up. So this is government intervention in what would otherwise be a kind of not quite marketplace situation. So I might as well stop there, but the other piece of that would be publicity, of course. When elections roll around, what would be the political implications of publicizing the cost to consumers per household, somewhat the same way the Trump economic plan has been forecast by the Wall Street Journal to increase inflationary costs for $1,700 average per household. What would be the political implications of doing something like that would make it obvious to voters what the cost would be to them of not having a level playing field in the energy industry? So thanks for listening to such long questions.
Yeah, one question is the trade one. Very simply, yes, we're seeing the building trades group be very supportive of community solar and solar for schools. And you see, well, solar for schools they both have a prevailing wage component in them. So yes, we are seeing support. Trades are not all equal. Building trades build solar, boiler makers tend not to. IBEW tends to split between pro and con. So it's very, trades are complicated, but there is increasing trade support. Subsidies, I put a link in the chat through a report that we did a couple years ago showing $3.8 billion of fossil fuel subsidies in Pennsylvania. That is a huge amount. The politics of doing something about it is challenging. It's something we're thinking about. And certainly I'd like to think more about your ideas of a bill and how that might work. It'd be hard to pass, but I think we would like something like that. So, see, 2 more questions, 3 more questions.
Tom?
Wait a minute. Okay. Yeah, it's a little out of your wheelhouse, Rob, but I'm friends with somebody who's working with the that group that's trying to stop gifts to politicians. what do they, shoot, something,
Yeah.
something. And I was just wondering if there's any update on that, and if you thought today's Supreme Court ruling that allowed bribery was going to have
Yeah, I saw it. I haven't really had any time to digest it or look at I haven't read the opinion from the Supreme Court, so I don't think I could say too much about it. I mean, obviously, good effective government works not as well when when there's like pretty much unrestricted influence. But yeah.
So but do you know where the legislation stands on
I
that?
have not been tracking it.
Okay, sorry. I'm done.
Elizabeth?
Keep reading about AI being a big energy hog, and
Ooh,
I'm wondering if that's a
yeah.
problem in Pennsylvania and it
Yes,
being used for excuse to have more fossil fuels, more
yeah, so
gas.
two different things. Data centers in general are an enormous energy demand. We like to split them in two groups. There's crypto mining, which is just obscenely energy intensive and all around terrible for the environment and no redeeming qualities that we can determine. There's a plant in the Panther Creek waste coal plant is now burning waste coal. We're actually fighting a permit where they want to burn tires as well to crypto mine. So really, really nasty stuff. That does create an enormous energy demand, more than the state of New York, like entire Scandinavian countries. Energy demand is what crypto uses. A crypto miner is a box the size of a toaster that uses about 3 times the energy of the average household. We have sites in Pennsylvania that have 80,000 of them. We've got lots of sites. So that is a huge energy demand that we'd like to do something about, but have not got traction in the legislature to do that. AI is a little bit different. And there's a couple components of that, things that we use, certainly ChatGPT or these new AI image tools and things like that. They are energy intensive. And that's creating a demand issue. We have, there's an area in Ohio, utility territory in Ohio, that's basically projecting more energy demand than New England, like the peak load of New England. From data centers. So it could be a tremendous amount of load. And how we're going to meet that is going to be difficult. Certainly, we can drastically increase the amount of clean renewable generation. That will be the cheapest way to do it. We do have a lot of clean renewable generation in our queue. Managing that transition is going to be hard. Now, what we're hearing from the other side is, well, we have to build more gas. We are in the camp where, aside from the environmental catastrophe that would be, that gas isn't reliable, is too expensive, solar is getting cheaper, gas is getting more expensive, it's volatile prices, it's unreliable, lots of problems with gas. We don't need more eggs in that basket. We've got to look at investing in other things. So hopefully that's what we do. But we're working on that.
Well, I knew when we asked Rob, or actually when Rob volunteered to talk about what was going on in Pennsylvania, that we would have the encyclopedic knowledge at our disposal. We certainly picked his brain on many, many topics, and he came out swinging home runs every single time because he understands and is so closely connected to everything going on in Harrisburg. I really want to thank you so much for this amazing tour of what's going on in terms of sustainability and what's going on in Harrisburg and comparison to elsewhere. Even a Supreme Court justice curveball question. So thank you so much. We're seeing a couple of interesting things in the chat, so I hope everybody can check it out. climatehealers.org. There was something, does anybody know anybody familiar with the work of Salish Rayo?
So I guess yeah, is somebody piping up?
No,
I
that's
was going to say
you.
it's Climate Healers Group.
Yeah, so I just want to put this into the ether of this group. I really haven't been to a meeting before, but I did found a few environmental organizations one in 2009, one in 2018. And just to cross-pollinate the idea of taking self-responsibility on our end. I was a fractivist for a decade with Sustainable Monroeville here out in, outside of Pittsburgh. And I realized that the fight isn't working in Pennsylvania. I'm from Maryland. I understand Maryland and all, New York and these more quote unquote progressive states. But what I started to do then was to look into myself and what actions are we doing by what we're putting in our mouth 2 to 3 times a day. So it's just a thought. It's pretty different from what most environmentalists think about ever. And I've become so passionate about it. I got a master's degree in it and wrote a book recently. But in any case, I would suggest that as we power down and become, more kind of self-aware of what we're doing as individuals, that the demand for energy will decrease and we won't be having so many of these conversations anymore. But our younger daughter was also in the solar industry for about 7 years, and she was actually in Massachusetts and just laid off. Interestingly, I don't exactly understand it, but I don't know what the answers are, but I know that we need to look within, and that's just all that I wanted to add here.
Thank you. Thank you for.
And I appreciate
cross-pollinating.
the report and also the simplification and also what you said, Phyllis, about, I appreciate it all. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We want to see all of you again. And now I want to turn it over to Ty. She has her name as the Interfaith Power and Light because she's representing them tonight. And we're going to ask you to take a couple of actions, some of which are quick and some of which take a little longer. So Ty, take it away, please.
Thank you, Phyllis. Hi, everybody. My name's Ty. Thank you for coming tonight, for being here, and thank you, Rob, for that wonderful overview. Incredibly knowledgeable. Like Phyllis said, I just have a couple of action items to share with y'all. First, we have the petition to protect SNAP and IRA funding in the 2024 Farm Bill. And then second, we have just the Defend Our Climate petition, which is a call on Congress to defend our climate progress for current and future generations. And then final plug is about a event that we have going on tomorrow night. PA IPL has been working on our civic engagement program to encourage people of faith and communities of faith to consider how their faith connect to civic engagement. And we are holding an info session tomorrow night about some resources that we're going to be sharing very, very soon, as well as the volunteer program that we'll be launching in the next month. So if you're interested in volunteering with us in our civic engagement program, or if you want to share it around with people who you might think might be interested, that would be great. If you can't volunteer with us, that's completely fine. The best thing you can do is really just share it around, and hopefully we can get some people on the ground. Thanks again for being here tonight. I really appreciate all of you.
So Ty, you put a couple of things into the chat, and I wonder if you could walk us through which is which, please.
Yes, that is my bad. Here, I hope that is helpful.
Yes, thank you. So the petition is one that many organizations for keeping SNAP in the Farm Bill. There's a whole other issue. The IRA funding was already budgeted. SNAP has been in the Farm Bill since it started in existence years ago. This is something that is really urgent that people get a hold of this and sign that petition. And do you want to talk a little bit about Defend Our Climate, sign the petition to defend our climate progress for current and future generations of our sacred earth?
Yeah, so we've just been running that petition along with a bunch of other organizations in PA, just collecting signatures from just Pennsylvania citizens to encourage our members in Congress to continue to defend our climate and to kind of defend the funding to the Inflation Reduction Act.
And who do they go to?
The petition, it
Yeah.
goes to our members of Congress.
Okay, thank you. And both of them go to members of Congress.
Yes.
Yeah. And the civic engagement, do you want to tell us what kind of civic engagement you're going to be getting to talk about, please?
Yeah, of course. So for the resource, we'll be coming out very soon with a sort of pamphlet booklet called Faith in Public Life that will teach or share some information about how different faith traditions connect with or call us to engage civically. And in that program, we will be going over the different tracks that we're taking to engage congregations and individuals of faith and civically. So that will look like having the opportunity to run workshops that a workshop that we are currently developing with your community, and you would get all of the training for that through the program. It also looks like you could volunteer as a field volunteer, where we will be registering people to vote on the ground and distributing the Faith in Public Life resource to different communities and just whoever you're already connected with.
Great. So I right now have filled out the petition. They signed the petitions. They take very little time. They're Google Forms. All you have to do is put your information in, and you've done a great job of helping us on these extremely important issues. So I want to know whether people have questions for Ty, or questions on how to access any of this, or further information about any of these actions.
I just want to say it's great. I've already signed. I was hoping Ty would be accompanying Katie Ruth, the executive director for PA IPL, when Katie was at FoomConk a couple of weeks ago. But that's okay. We forgive you, Ty. You were probably busy, or you're probably back at home in Memphis. So anyways, Katie briefed a number of us on those issues. We had a workshop after the service, and there were about 10 or 15 people there. And I hope I had more people like me went ahead and signed up and did those tasks as well.
It's great to see you, Mark. I appreciate FoomCog and all the wonderful work that y'all are doing, and I do hope to make our way. We'll bring the civic engagement workshop to FoomCog very soon, very soon.
Look forward to it.
There's a note in the chat from Eliza wanting more information on some of IPL's work. So maybe if you could have her share with you her email address or phone number, then you could reach out.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, Bill. Eliza, if you want to drop your email to me in the chat, direct message, or just publicly, I can send you all of that information because I don't have direct access to it right now. I'm also
Yeah, I would love to do a direct message, but that isn't an option. So I don't know what to do about that.
I just dropped my email in the chat. If you
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much on this hot night, at least in the eastern part of the state. I don't know where it is the rest of the state.
We're under a tornado warning in the west.
Oh, okay.
I had a few mad, crazy blasts on my phone.
Yeah, same thing. Tornadoes and floods. Yeah.
Okay, Pennsylvania never got tornadoes when I was a child, but the world has changed, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, we have covered a huge amount of material. We've covered a huge amount of very, very current issues going on in Pennsylvania. And I want to thank you all for doing this. The next time we meet will be in August. And I can't tell you what the topic is going to be, because who knows what's going to pass? Who knows what's happening in Harrisburg or in Washington? But I'm quite sure it'll be something that will be relevant to all of us. So I want to thank you all for attending so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Great
Phyllis.
session.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you,
Thank
Ty.
you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, Ty.
everyone.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for all your wonderful questions.
Okay, stay safe, everybody.